Well, here we are at probably over 7,000 subs by the time this video has finally gone up, and it's time for something special. A few of you may remember when the channel changed to making horror content back in 2020, but probably even fewer of you will remember the channel was actually making content back in 2015, though none of that really still remains, at least on this channel. It's been a slow crawl, but here we are at this random milestone in the road, and what better way to commemorate the moment than to answer some questions, and to put it bluntly, you've all asked me some brilliant questions. These were far better than I anticipated, and there are some great, well thought out and sincere questions, even the one about pie. So, let's get started. What prompted you to start reviewing horror games? The thing that basically influenced me to start doing horror game reviews was seeing Outside Xbox, which is a channel I love, state that Resident Evil 7 was the scariest game ever made. I was at a point where I had an interest in horror games and just went out and bought Resident Evil 7 based on what they said, but I kind of walked away from that game with mixed opinions. It was really good up until the boat, but I didn't find it very scary. The next game they mentioned was Outlast 2 when that released, and again, I bought it and played it, but I just didn't find it particularly scary either, and I realised that most YouTube channels were, at the time, and a lot of them still are really, mostly there to react to games rather than say why they're frightening or if they're frightening. No disrespect obviously to Outside Xbox, but it was them finding games scary that made me want to review games and put an actual system to the process of it. Is there any influence on your analysis style? There's not many reviewers on YouTube that I actively watch, barely any. And several stopped making content years ago. Matthew Mitosis was a really good one that I used to like watching. I really enjoyed the videos he did on Dark Souls and Demon Souls, even the 6-hour one. It made me reconsider things about world design and stuff like that. It made me think more about it. What was the first movie that ever scared me? Right, it was the 1953 version of The War of the Worlds. My dad was a huge sci-fi fan, and I was shown a lot of sci-fi and horror content when I was like 6 or 7, but I liked this film except for the one part, which was when a meteor lands on the farmhouse, the two main characters are trapped inside in the ruins of the home, and it gets really creepy. They realize that the aliens are outside and trying to get in, and after some close encounters with this robot that tries to get into the house, they try to break out, when the shadow appears on the back wall, which leads to a spindly brown arm on one of the characters' backs, and that prompts them to point a flashlight at what's touching her, and it's this alien. And for 1953, the special effects were really good, but I was horrified as a kid and had so many different nightmares about this thing. Ironically, it's now my favourite part of the film, but as a kid, this just scared me. The first game to scare me. The first game to properly scare me was Amnesia: The Dark Descent, but more importantly, it was the first game to teach me how to play horror games properly. I've been told Silent Hill 2 is good and everything, and I went out and bought these games and played them, but I kind of like played them at daytime, you know, in the middle of the day. I wasn't wearing headphones, and like obviously they didn't have much of an impact on me, but like Amnesia came along and it said, you know, play them at night with headphones on, and this is how it's meant to be played. So in many ways, because of how Amnesia scared me so bad, it opened up my eyes to how scary games that I'd already played were, which led me to playing Penumbra and quite a lot of other scary games, and that leads you to where we are today. What gaming moment has startled me the hardest? I think it's still the Nun jump scare from Graveyard Shift. That got me so surprisingly well that I was stunned and thinking about it for hours afterwards, days afterwards actually. It was such an impressive jump scare that got me so good. Assuming whatever comes out will be as close to your dream game as it can, what horror film or franchise would you most want turned into a game, and how would it play? I think maybe something like Annihilation would be great, but we technically already have that with the Stalker games. I guess I'd like something more like Annihilation, where it's like the deliberate bending of the environment and nature and less about, you know, shooting people. I think maybe something like a long journey through the environment with some AI companions that follow you around, like they'd eventually die off due to like hostile encounters with anomalies, or even just they like degenerate like in the film. So yeah, something like that where you're just left alone to make it to the other side, I think, maybe. What's the horror game or franchise with the most wasted potential you'd love to see remade or rebooted? Probably Haunting Ground or like Lost in Vivo, but I think those games are mostly like one and done, so maybe not sequels, but maybe reboots. At least a reboot of Haunting Ground. I think a lot of people would like that. If you could only pick one of the more underrated and underplayed games you've played to signal boost so more people try it, what would it be? Burnhouse Lane. Easily one of the most emotional and impactful horror games I've played in a long time. It was not only impressive, but so great artistically. It's a really, really good game. What are some of your other hobbies? This is a long list, but I like playing guitar, writing, I like making art, photography, music, animations. I'm kind of compulsed to make things. YouTube is just the one people actually want me to do. I'd be making other things if I wasn't doing this. Do you read fiction or manga, and if so, which? I mainly read like hard sci-fi books, but I have like other like horror content things specifically for like research purposes. Like when I was doing the cosmic horror thing, I bought a big book of Lovecraft's work and read through that. But the stuff that I read for myself is mainly like hard sci-fi. I've been reading through the Formic Wars, which is a precursor to Ender's Game, which I haven't read, so I've kind of blown the reading sequence on that one. Manga, though, I read a lot of Junji Ito works in the past. I don't really have the money to delve deeper into his wealth of work, but I've read Uzumaki, Gyo, and Tomi, and some of the others. I think Smashed. My favorite is the Enigma of Amigara Fault, though. Love that story. What about music? I picture black metal for some reason. I listen to all sorts of things, but I have to be honest, I've never tried listening to black metal. More of a prog or thrash fan for metal. I mainly listen to like things that help me think, though I love like 80s pop, 50s jazz, 90s metal. It's like an amalgamation. I did music in school, and that sort of thing gives you an appreciation for all sorts of forms of music and just like exposes you to a lot of different stuff. But I do mainly listen to like ambient music simply because it helps me have ideas and think about things. It imposes a mood onto you, and then that like it makes it easier for me to write. So yeah, I use that for scripts and stuff. It's very understated and provides a mood and just lets your brain work. What films have influenced your eye for editing and film production as well as writing? I think mainly like the BBC Planet Earth series, ironically. I'm not going to pretend that I'm like a great editor, as with like everything else on the channel. I'm just self-taught, so I do what feels natural as it comes. Though I'm probably influenced by things I've seen, so just a lot of horror films, John Carpenter's The Thing, and other stuff are like the main inspiration for editing. I suppose I was supposed to go to film school when I was back in school, but I chose not to and moved on to other things. My writing style is always evolving a little. I'm not sure I could really pinpoint my inspirations for that. I tend to imagine a scene in my head and then imagine the dialogue for it sometimes when I write. What films can you put on at any time and enjoy? Evil Dead 2, the John Wick films, Moonfall, The War of the Worlds, From Dusk Till Dawn. There's not very many films that I just pop on. I tend to make an event out of watching a film. I feel like they really require my attention and respect, unless it's Moonfall. That's just a really enjoyable bad film. Have you tried Krypta FM? I have never even heard of it, to be honest, but I will look it up after I'm done with the video. What's your favorite cryptid? There are so many good ones. Everyone loves like the Mothman, the Chupacabra, and like stuff like that, but I like the really stupid ones, like Spring-Heeled Jack. There was like a really old English one where a guy was depicted as a devil, but he was just someone who could really jump, which was what all of the encounters with this particular cryptid seemed to be. I tend to gravitate towards the lesser known ones, and because I end up seeing videos on them a lot when I'm bored. You can eat 5 meals for the rest of your life. What would you choose? Stuffed crust pizza, ham carbonara, butter chicken, forest fruit strudel, and a nice coconut smoothie. What is your favourite subgenre of horror? I hate to say found footage, but it's probably found footage. I think the style is a great method for storytelling, but I think too many found footage films just suffer really badly with pacing. Like, usually the start is too slow and then the ending is really frantic. They don't seem to know how to escalate things properly, but I tend to watch for that sweet spot in the middle. That's where all the good stuff is. What horror game has left the biggest psychological impact on you, and what is it about it that unsettled you the most? Probably Discover My Body or something like that. I found that really difficult to get through. I don't think there's very many that have left me like traumatized. Maybe Soma the very first time, but I don't think there's that many that have really gotten to me that much. There's more films that I don't like watching than games that I don't like playing. Like I've watched Hereditary and Midsommar exactly once and still have like no desire to watch those films again, but I think they're very good. Did you ever have a moment where you realized that your YouTube channel and the work that you put into it destroyed the normal joy of gaming for you? I can say categorically no. I still enjoy playing games with my friends whenever I have time to do so. I recorded far more than I needed for gameplay for this video, and it was really relaxing and I enjoyed every second of it. I still get excited to play new horror games when I see them, though I'm not a pre-order kind of person. I just find new things and try them when I see them. What are your favourite breeds of pets and which would you bring into a horror situation? I'm a dog person. I grew up with them. We've always had dogs, along with birds and other animals. As for which I'd bring into a horror situation, none, preferably. I wouldn't want to subject the dog or any other animal to a horror situation. They really don't deserve it. I'd just die. What was your first experience of playing a horror game? Alone in the Dark New Nightmare I played on my pretty rubbish computer in broad daylight, like probably about 4 or 5 years after the game came out. As I've said several times, I don't even think it was a horror game at the time, though I do remember being pretty disturbed by the drowning cutscene. I remember that really bothered me. Have you ever played the game Shadow Man? No. I have seen it multiple times, but I haven't really ever thought that it was a horror game, though it's one of those ones where I find it, if I can't tell, then I just tend to leave it until, you know, it becomes more apparent. Do you plan to review Five Nights at Freddy's 2 to 4 and beyond? I think I would be more inclined to review them if the response they garnered in the public was better, because like nearly every time I bring them up, someone has to say something about how they're games for kids and how they're turned off by the fan base, and I don't really know much about the fan base. I've not really like gone into it. I'm unsure how much really the games though have kind of changed since the first game to really warrant reviewing each one. If I end up with them, of course, I'll just go through them like all the other games I've got to do. Do you have a favourite kind of pie? Cherry pie is, of course, the ultimate pie. Agent Cooper was right.
This must be where pies go when they die.
Are mummies zombies, or a different category altogether? Mummies have had their internal organs removed and the cavities filled with God knows what before they were wrapped up, and I suppose if you look at it in the way that a mortician's job is just a far more sophisticated version of mummification with a different end goal, then yeah, technically mummies are just a different class of zombies. They're all undead, I guess. Do you prefer retro horror games or the new ones released in the last 5 years? I think I enjoy retro horror games more, but that's probably because most of my favourite horror games are well over 10 years old at this point. Do you think we've seen any improvements, regression in horror game quality over the last 2 decades? I think we're not in the best place for horror games at the moment. The genre is far from stale, but it feels like there's a lack of innovation, at least from my perspective. It doesn't feel like we're really utilising the best things that came out of some of the most influential games. Like from, say, PT, everyone ended up copying like the repeating hallway, but I haven't seen anyone try and put a unique spin on Lisa projecting her shadow in front of you, which freaked me out far more than the endless corridor. We also get a lot of lazy clones on storefronts from Steam. Like, it's littered with people releasing games that are just like combinations of popular things like The Backrooms, Lethal Company, or The Exit 8, and they don't really seem to expand on these ideas, just jam them all together, which ends up being like if you took the top 3 sandwich filler flavors and just mixed them all together. There are good games coming out now, but cash grabs have kind of always existed. I just suppose they're just more in my face now than they were. Which years would you consider the golden age of horror games? I think it's got to be like 1999 to 2005, literally between Resident Evil 3 and Resident Evil 4. I think there's like Silent Hill 1 to 4 in there, Fatal Frame, System Shock 2, Fear, Haunting Ground, The Suffering, Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare, lots of my favourite horror games, and games that felt like they innovated on something to make them all stand out quite a bit from each other. What was the first horror game you ever played, and was it the reason you fell in love with the genre, or was it another game that hooked you? The first one I ever played was Alone in the Dark: The New Nightmare, I think. But that wasn't really the game that hooked me. I didn't even think much of it at the time. I remember playing Amnesia: The Dark Descent in like 2010. I downloaded the demo because I didn't have any money.
God.
And the demo scared me pretty badly. And I used what little money I had then to buy the game, and then that was it. Fell in love with the genre. What is it about horror games that fascinates you, and what are your thoughts about horror games today? I already answered the second part of another question, but I think that I just like the atmosphere of horror games. I initially played Penumbra Overture after playing Amnesia: The Dark Descent, and loved the weird feeling of isolation you get from that game and things like it. The whole being alone on a spooky night or going into some decrepit building is just oddly fun. And after Amnesia made me feel the actual fear for the first time I played it, I've been like virtual thrill-seeking to not only find profound games like Soma or Mouthwashing, but like games that just manage to scare me. Top 5 horror protagonists and why? Heather Mason, because Heather is just really fun and relatable. Agent Francis York Morgan is a character I just like in every game to talk about movies. Leon Kennedy is obviously the best character in all of Resident Evil and needs to be in more games. Isaac Clarke, especially from Dead Space 2, just because he gained a lot of personality in that game and I find him far more relatable. And maybe Miku from Fatal Frame 1. I don't really have a good reason for liking Miku, I just like Miku. What are some other genres games you enjoy? Top 5 perhaps. This is going to be a long answer, and this is the one that I've prepped for the most. I've spent many long time getting ready to answer this one question. This may be surprising, but none of my favorite games are really horror games. I'm going to list a few honorable mentions, and I'm going to do a top 5 because there's just so many things that I've played over the years. I'm in my 30s and I never had money for new games when I was younger, so I expect a lot of older titles. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain is one of my favorites. It's a very silly stealth action game that's also really, really fun. Fallout 3 is my favorite Fallout game, mainly because it's more survival and exploration oriented than the others. It's definitely not the best Fallout game though. Final Fantasy VII Original and Final Fantasy IX are both games I love dearly, and whilst I've played both of them to death, I've probably played 7 to its absolute completion at least once, and hope to do it again sometime. Probably one of the best RPGs ever. Then there's Earthbound, probably one of the other best games I've ever played. That's it's an inspiration outside of my writing style. Well, it's an inspiration of my writing style outside of the channel. Forza Horizon 4 is my favorite racing game. Spent hours playing this and putting all the stupid skins on the car. I play a lot of Tekken, and Tekken Tag 2 is my favorite, but I've had a go at pretty much all of them. I love the Spyro Reignited trilogy, but Spyro the Dragon, the first one, that's my favorite game of the series. Skyrim is a game that I've only sunk a few hundred hours into. Age of Empires 2 is my favorite medieval combat simulator. Return to Castle Wolfenstein is the best first-person shooter with zombies, Nazis, and science experiments in it. Quake 2 is another one of my favorite first-person shooters. I love playing The Sims 1 because it's stupid and goofy and gives me the power fantasy of owning a home. And finally, Monkey Island 2 or 3 are some of my favourite games because of the bizarre adventure you go on and the dialogue that never stops making me laugh all these years later. As for the top 5, in no real order, there's the Yakuza games as a series. I'm a huge fan of Zero, Kiwami 2, and controversially Yakuza 3. Kazuma Kiryu is my all-time favourite protagonist, and his saga is absolutely incredible and well worth the experience. The franchise is filled with great characters, cool moments, lots of great writing, and some of the most memorable and funny minigames and side quests I've had the pleasure of playing. Over the past 5 years, I've played every game in the Kiryu saga from the start to finish, and each one has been incredible, though I have sort of shied away from the newer entries because I'm not a fan of turn-based combat in Yakuza. Next up is Super Metroid. This is a game I knew I'd like long before I played it. It's delving deep into an alien world and finding upgrades and navigating its maze and hostile environments. It's creepy, atmospheric, there's lots of different biomes to explore. I love games that give me that feeling of isolation, as I mentioned earlier, which also plays into my horror game phase, and Super Metroid really delivers that. I'm still sad that I've found myself not really enjoying any of the other games in the series though. Metal Gear Rising is obviously the best game ever made and needs no explaining. Its final 40 minutes is the best 40 minutes of any game ever, and it's the best 5 hours you can possibly hope to have. Crash Bandicoot 2 is just a game from my childhood that didn't really ever leave my muscle memory. I still love this one, most out of all of the games, even if I have more nostalgia for Crash 1. I love playing it, and I would do so like most weeks, given the option. I beat this game in 2 hours for the video, and back in the day it gave me the confidence to think that I could play what's coming up next. Dark Souls is a series is something that I love. And whilst Dark Souls 3 is a brilliant game, and whilst I'm not the biggest fan of Dark Souls 2, I do get what it's trying to do. However, the original game is an experience that made me appreciate games as something to convey more than a good time. I don't think I'd be here writing any of this without having played Dark Souls. It taught me a lot about atmosphere, but also storytelling, game design, patience and persistence. It's really honestly the best game I think that I have ever played. When I went to play the game back in 2018, I did for the challenge, because at the time I was just kind of insecure about my skill in games. And despite the horrible things I called it and the struggle I endured to beat it, the complaining to my friends and all the times that I felt like I was giving up, I was too stubborn to stop, and by the time the credits rolled, I was sad it was over. Next to Earthbound, it's probably the most profound gaming experience I think I've ever had. I've played all of the Souls games at this point and really just can't imagine my life without them. And this brings an end to the Q&A. I hope this has been enlightening, and feel free to ask any more questions in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you to everyone who's subbed since the channel began, even way back before I was making horror content. It's been a really slow, arduous journey to get here, and where I am still feels like nowhere. It's been several long years of fighting against the algorithm provide you with niche content that will probably never get popular. It never gets any easier, but at least leads to cool things, and is still probably one of my best achievements so far. So, I will see you all in the next video, and always go check out Bumps in the middle of the night. Peace.